My name is Conrad Nobert, and I'm here with Peter Amarongan today. We are going to speak about net zero housing in Edmonton. After nearly a decade, are we there yet? And the way that we came up with that title is that starting in 2007, I think, Peter built he and his company built on for me and my family Edmonton's first fully detached net zero home, and so it's almost been 10 years, and Peter's still at it. Well, and I'm living in the house now, and so that's how we came up with our title. So we're gonna each introduce ourselves here, and then I'm gonna talk a little bit about how my kind of story arc with the house and how things are going with it. And then Peter's going to take it from there and talk about I think kind of the state of the art today. All right, so yeah, I'll just quickly talk about myself. My name's Conrad. I am a NAIT instructor. So I've been teaching in the digital media and IT department at NAIT for 15 years now. I'm a father and a husband. I have a young family. I'm an advocate for different facets of sustainable living. So I 8 years ago I kind of just mothballed this site, but eight years ago I started this site greenedmonton.ca, and I actually wrote over 50 blog posts about building this Mill Creek net zero home, which is what I called it. These days, I've been working with the Edmonton Bike Coalition, and also with the Reboot White Committee. So involved in some active sustainable transportation initiatives. All right, so I'm gonna invite Peter up to introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Peter Amarongan. I'm a partner with Habitat Studio and Workshop. I've been building houses since the 1970s, and been concerned about energy efficiency and housing since about then too. And I don't think I need to say much more than that. And let's carry on with Conrad, and we'll flip back and forth a little bit here. So yeah.
Yeah, and I should mention I'm honored to be up here with Peter Amarongan. He is, I tell everyone, the premier resource for cold climate green building, probably in the world, I think. And I can happily report that we were very happy with his company in building our house, and I can also report that they do earn their reputation for not being the cheapest home builder in the city. Just kidding. Every dollar was well spent. Okay, so back in about 2005, I went to this movie about peak oil, and at the time it really made a splash. I think probably in North America, and also in my consciousness, it was called The End of Suburbia, and so it really woke me up to the kind of possibility and reality in some places of the world of scarcity. So I started thinking about peak oil, which nowadays is much less of a concern because technology has kind of raced forward, and now we have a glut of oil again, right? But at the time in 2005, I was really thinking about the massive amount of energy that the house that I lived in was using, and we had actually done some renovations on it, to make it more energy efficient, and it still used just this massive amount of energy. And so I was really thinking about that, and I started getting really motivated about the idea of building of crafting a response to this idea. So I was thinking a lot about what happens when growth reverses. Now, right now, that seems kind of like it's way back in our rearview mirror because energy is flooding the markets right now. But it is inevitable. Like growth on a finite planet, infinite growth on a finite planet is just impossible, right? And it's something that we very rarely discuss. But anyways, this is what I was thinking about at the time. So yeah, I was asking myself questions like, what would my life look like at $5 a liter gasoline, right? What would it look like at $20 a gigajoule for natural gas, which is laughable now because it's like just stupidly cheap right now. But anyways, and also, what does my life look like if there was no food coming from outside of Canada? Just a kind of mental exercise, and so I was really concerned with these questions. I was also really concerned about climate change, which I think is at the forefront of our consciousness today. But 10 years ago, it was a pretty lonely place in Alberta to be thinking about climate change. Right. So we at the time, these are old numbers now, but I think that they are still quite accurate. In terms of rankings. So if you look at per capita greenhouse gas emissions, so per person, right, there are the oil producing countries at the top. This is 2004 data. The U.S. and Canada are near the top, but about 20 tons of greenhouse gases per capita. Then there are some other countries. I used to just boil my blood when what was his name, Lauren Gunter, or our old Minister of Environment. He would point at China and say, well, unless they do something, we're not going to do anything, right? And at the time they were about 91st overall in the world in per capita greenhouse gas emissions, right? If Alberta were a country, and this was at the time, where do you think we are? We're number one, right? So I really felt a moral imperative. We are getting rich off of this resource that we have, and we are therefore emitting a lot more per capita. But we also have a lot more money, so we should be doing something about it. So that's what when the lot two doors down from me went for sale. We bought it, and then I started planning and masterminding this house. Of course, at a layperson's level. So then I had all these ideas, which I'm going to talk about here, and then I just ran to Peter and said, "Can you make this happen?" And then he magically made it happen, and it was awesome. So yeah, and out of the early energy crises in the 70s came two kind of schools of thought about green building, and so one was out of the southwestern states, and so they were making passive homes using what was called mass and glass. So you put lots of windows facing south. There's lots of mass in the house, but you don't insulate it very well, but it worked quite well for them, I think, because their winters hilariously, they're like winter and it's 15 degrees out or whatever, right? So passive solar homes, usually when you back when I was reading anyways, got a book about passive solar homes, it talked about this mass and glass, right? But then up here, us crazy Canucks came up with this idea of light and tight, and so there was the Saskatchewan Conservation House, and then this green building pioneer Rob Dumont, also from Saskatchewan, built two houses that didn't worry about glass, didn't worry about having a lot of mass in the house, so light, right? So they didn't have a lot of mass, but they were well insulated and very tightly sealed, right? So that there wasn't a lot of air moving in and out. So yeah, these are two of the books that I read a lot and got to know really well. The one on the left is out of print, and I don't believe you can even download it right now, which is too bad.
I have it digitally.
Okay, good.
I got to tell you a story about that book too. So Conrad actually came to me before we built the Riverdale house. I already had the land for that. We were in the planning stage, but he wanted us to build the Equilibrium house on his lot. And I said, "No, Conrad, I bought this lot. I got to use it." And he said, "Okay, but I'm next." So we get to starting to design his house, and we're doing the modeling, and he wants to put some thermal mass in the house, and I'm having visions of concrete floors with Q deck and steel joists and this horrible disruption to the whole building sequence that was going to be really costly, because even though we're expensive, we didn't want to be that expensive. And so he went behind my back to my good friend Andy Smith, who's a structural engineer, and he said, nah. He said, just pour the concrete on top of the wood floor. And so that's what we did, and that came out of Tap the Sun. That was one of the best things we did in that house. Anyway, sorry.
All right. Yeah, so I was kind of like the maniac with these ideas, and Peter, I mean, he's extreme for his field. He had to rein me in. So, yeah. So anyways, so after kind of memorizing these books and reading about these techniques for a couple of years, I thought, well, why don't we build a house that is tight with mass and glass? And so from what I could find, that hadn't been done yet. So combining like very very high levels of insulation with a very tight envelope, and also making it passive solar. So having massive concrete floors inside of it, and very large south windows. So that was our concept. Once I finally twisted Peter's arm, and then we went forward with the house. So what I did, and we used computer modeling a lot, and so what I've done here is I've modeled a like conventional house, my house, if it was built using conventional techniques. Okay, and so it would consume about 28,000 kilowatt hours a year, just kind of a straight up conventional house. Right, built like this. So 2x6 construction, like most of the new houses that are built in the suburbs these days. So by insulating the house, right, we reduced its like energy consumption from a conventional house by about 30%. Okay, and so. Oh yeah, you actually can't see the words down there, but these are 16-inch thick walls for an R rating of R56, R90 ceiling, R50 in the basement walls, and then R like 24 under the basement slab. Okay, so we built Peter's crew built like double walls. Right, you can see on the left there that they're 16 inches apart, and then filled them with cellulose insulation, and then. Very importantly, we put 2 layers of foam under the concrete slab. There shouldn't be a concrete slab poured in Edmonton that does not have foam under it. It's insane. It will bleed energy for its entire life into that earth underneath. And so that's a crazy conventional practice that I really hope ends soon. So then what we did, from moving from a conventional house, now we've insulated it, is sealed it. And so Peter has actually developed this framing technique, like by which very, very high levels of sealing can be achieved on a house, which means that not a lot of air from the outside can flow through the walls. Okay, so this again, you can't see the words there, but this by moving from 3 air changes per hour, which is the equivalent of a 114 square inch hole, so I don't know how big that is, something like that, to 0.5 air changes per hour, which is the equivalent of a 20 square inch hole in your house. If you added all the little leaks and all the little cracks and stuff, it would be a much smaller hole. We went from 17,000 kilowatt hours in heating load to about 13,000. So we cut it by what, 25% or so again. And this is Adam, the framer, doing some ceiling details on the house. So the next thing we did, I did in the computer modeling was I just took the house and just turned it towards the sun, 90 degrees. So just by doing that, recognizing that there's this big ball of fusion in the air, and actually designing a house with that in mind, we got 2,000 kilowatt hours more out of it. So another 15%. And I think that like lots of houses these days are built in large suburban areas, and they are pre-designed models that don't take which way the sun is oriented towards, or the house is oriented towards the sun, into account. So that's insulating the house, not insulating, insulating. So in other words, bathing it in sun, right? So then we made a huge jump from 11,000 kilowatt hours to about 3,700 by buying the best windows that money could buy. So fiberglass windows, like triple pane. That's another thing. I morally disagree with the selling of double pane windows. Just don't do it. Don't buy them. Don't sell them. We live in Edmonton. It's cold here. So again, we like that time it lopped off about 60% of the heating load. Right. So the house, this is facing south, obviously, has huge windows and a lot of sun coming in. And again, we got very high-end windows. So the last thing we did was we added like concrete floors. I think about 12 metric tons of concrete on the main floor, and then another 12 on the like second floor. Now what this does is that like, because we have such large south windows, if we didn't have this mass in there, we would fry in the fall. So the sun is low during that time, and it's still relatively warm out, and so it would get very too hot in the house. But with the concrete floors, they act as these heat batteries, and they keep it relatively comfortable. And then once the sun goes down, they radiate heat for the rest of the night. So other like aspects of the house, we don't have a dryer. So we haven't had a dryer now for 15 years, because I didn't have one in my old house, and we're still around. So we've managed to survive without a dryer. I know it's crazy talk in the first world, but you can lop off 1,000 kilowatt hours a year of energy use, and I managed to make it here, even though I'm hanging my laundry all the time. No, actually, it's only like 20 minutes. 20 minutes a week for me, and another 20 for my wife. We hang dry our laundry. We also had like energy efficient appliances and lighting, permaculture landscape for the food aspect. We live in a very walkable neighborhood. That's actually not true anymore. We just bought a car. My 2 kids are in hockey. Hockey broke me. After 7 years living without a car, now we have one. We also wanted to increase density, and so at the time there wasn't a basement suite allowed on the lot, but with our zoning, but now there is. So our modeling showed, and it isn't exactly the same as what I ended up at, but because we went through so many different iterations, but about 3,000 kilowatt hours a year for space heating. About 3,200 a year for domestic hot water heating, and then 4,400 a year for our appliances, for a total of about 10,500. And we thought we would get 8,000 to 8,500 from our solar panels, from our photovoltaic solar panels, then another like 2,500 per year from our solar hot water system, right? So we had three solar hot water collectors on the roof as well. All right, so I'm going to talk about our results. We've been living in the house for 5 years now, and then I'll talk about some final thoughts, and then I'll pass it on to Peter. So I actually hadn't checked on our energy use for years because I bought this device. Actually, the Solar Energy Society bought it for me, and I never really got it working properly to measure. But so I just went back to an old picture that I took in October of 2010 of my bidirectional power meter. And the picture was not going to lie, right? And so then I looked at my power use a few days ago here. So our average annual net energy use. So this means like the amount of electricity we've bought from the grid minus the amount that we've sold to the grid it was not net zero. It was about 2,400 kilowatt hours. So we missed the net zero mark by not a lot, actually. That's about 5 months of electricity only use for an like average house in Edmonton. So we were close. Why did we not reach net zero? The PV system is only generating 7,000 kilowatt hours a year. So, and we had estimated 8,000 to 8,500. We also have a basement suite, which wasn't. I don't actually remember if we accounted for it. If we did account for it, then I don't think that we properly did. And actually the number is a bit worse than it sounds, because 3 of the last 5 years we've burned a cord to a cord and a half of wood in the house. So the heating. So but there's no way for us to account how much, unless I had weighed the wood, which I didn't. Yeah. So yeah, we didn't reach net zero. I think also that our like modeling software, when a house gets, I don't think it was really made for super advanced houses, right? So once you're dealing with 3,000 kilowatt hours a year, I think that probably we were off with our like heating load estimates. So, but I mean, it was, zero was always not a random number, but just a number. So we are very, very happy with the house. Like that's a day when which we actually have many of, when our like living room is being flooded with sunshine. So in February in our house, after we've lived through 3 months of winter, the sun that comes through those windows is wonderful. And so that's something that I think we can, moving forward, really sell on these advanced houses, is that they're just so comfortable to live in, right? I can on a minus 30 day, I can sit beside our windows and read in the sun, and it's perfectly comfortable, right? Because those windows aren't freezing cold; they're actually feel warm, right? Also, the house to me is an investment of enduring value. So it's something like all of that insulation provides value for us 24/7, and it'll keep doing it because it's a very well built house. And I think it could, easily be around for 200 years. So this is this was an investment for us that is ready for like 2050. Right? If you're at the last session, Peter was talking about building houses today that are ready for our low carbon future. And so we have no regrets. We really enjoy the house, and we're very happy that we went forward with it and built it. So now I'll pass it on to Peter to talk about the state of the art today.
Hi, so just a little bit more about what we do. We build mostly high-end houses. We try to make them as energy efficient as possible. We've taken what we've learned from projects like Conrad's and rolled that into most of our houses. And I also want to thank Conrad too, because we're a small company. We don't have a research arm. Conrad and the other people that we've built net zero energy houses for have taken their hard-earned mortgage dollars and kind of invested them in technology that's not super proven. I think it is now, but it certainly wasn't then. And in my opinion, like we would not. We built the first one, but we couldn't have gone any further without people who were willing to step up with their hard-earned dollars and engage with us, and particularly Conrad, where he not only engaged with us but he challenged us to do better. Those are the real heroes in my opinion. For me it's a job. Before I go too much further, I want to talk about why I'm hell-bent on doing this stuff. And I didn't know this I knew this in my bones at the time, but I was at the Passive House Conference in Vancouver about a month ago, and there was a woman from the IPCC giving the keynote address. She's a building economist living in Budapest, who gave a presentation on the importance of not just reducing building emissions and the huge role they have in the whole climate change thing, but the importance of reducing them a lot right now with every project. And so the idea behind, the locked-in emissions, every time you build something, whatever you built is going to require energy for the next 50, 100 years, or until it gets upgraded. But you're not going to upgrade frequently. It's too expensive. You have to rip out good stuff. And so when you build something today, you're realistically locking in the emissions until, after we need to have fixed this stuff. And that applies not only to building new buildings, but also to retrofits. If you do a halfway sort of retrofit today, you're not going to come back in 5 years and fix that and take it further. You need to do the retrofit today that we need for 2050. And so it just totally breaks my heart to cruise down 104th Avenue with a massive construction project around the arena. These are mediocre buildings. These are buildings that we are not going to be able to fix. They're going to be spewing greenhouse gases for. So we cannot let any building opportunity where it's easy to upgrade it. We can't miss those opportunities. It's really urgent that the provincial government right now is looking at retrofitting some buildings. If they don't retrofit them to the 2050 standard we need, they're wasting our taxpayer dollars. Anyway, so we're not alone in this. There's a whole lot of great stuff going on in North America. If we want to go from being, the highest greenhouse gas emissions in the world to among the best, we got a long ways to go. And we're competing with people who are doing great things all over the place. We've got the Net Zero Energy Home Coalition that's started in Canada, but it's mostly working in the U.S. now, helping builders move toward net zero energy. We're getting lots of traction. Some of the great big home builders in the U.S., Pulte, Toll Brothers, people like that, are now delivering net zero energy houses. The U.S. DOE is doing a great job on training and helping builders market net zero energy houses. California, where the sun shines all the time, but they also are seeing more than anybody on the planet, possibly in the developed world anyway. The consequences of not doing anything are highly motivated. They're moving. They've got a bunch of targets that take them very quickly to a low carbon future, and they're leading by example. So whenever they build a government building, they're building it to net zero energy. They're going after that in their schools and retrofits and all that sort of thing. They're building net zero energy buildings in Massachusetts. They're aiming for net zero energy in all new buildings by 2030. Building jobs and energy around it. The city of Cambridge, who's really taken a kind of a gritty look at this, is aiming for net zero energy for the whole city, not just for the building. And they've done a really comprehensive roadmap where they've looked at every energy component: driving, transportation, building energy, municipal services, and developed a roadmap to get them down to around 70% by 2040. So this is what we're up against if we want to be leaders. We really got to get going, and I think net zero energy housing is part of that. The DOE has done a great job in helping helping builders sell this stuff, looking at the value proposition, which I'll talk about a little bit toward the tail end here. And then the passive house movement, I mean, based on our Saskatchewan pioneers have built they've taken this fairly simple approach and built the highest building energy efficiency standard in the world. And that was, they've now got about 30,000 of them in Europe. They're getting to be more and more in the US and Canada. And it's by far the best platform for net zero energy building. The City of Vancouver is now recognizing it in their planning process. So is New York. Even President Obama is pointing at passive house as the way of the future. So I'm not going to dwell on this, but in addition to looking at energy, they've also gone further and looked at durability, and they're designing building assemblies that are not only energy efficient, but they're also highly durable. Because when you think about it, the embodied energy of a building is the energy that goes into its construction, and that's all up front. Like, that gets expended today. Most buildings, like the rule of thumb is that the embodied energy of a building is roughly 10% of the total energy that building will emit for heating and other, like other energy needs. But if you cut that down by 90%, all of a sudden your operational energy and your embodied energy are equal. And the only way to do much about that is to make darn sure that building is going to last twice as long, because then that number looks better. And so we've borrowed and stolen all kinds of little bits of the passive house technique to make our houses bigger or better and to make them more affordable. And back here in Alberta, we've got Landmark who build, in the neighborhood. I mean, Reza said this morning it was about 880 houses last year, and they're moving towards net zero energy houses in their factory, and have taught us a couple of things that you can actually heat houses in Edmonton with air source heat pumps, and which I'll talk about a little bit more as we go along. And then there's the Mosaic Center here in Edmonton. So we're on the right track, but our numbers, when the mayor brags about having 35 houses or so, I don't think he used that number, but that's what we have now, net zero energy houses, dwellings in Edmonton. That's great. That's more than anywhere else in Canada, but it's also terrible that 35 is the number that's the highest in Canada. We got so far to go. So we've done 10 now. These are the kind of the first 6, the first sort of generation where we were focused heavily on passive solar and less, and they were on decent sites, except for the Holyrood one, which had a really huge, expensive solar thermal system. But basically we were taking advantage of the sort of mass and glass, or at least glass approach, to get a big chunk of our heating energy from the sun, and we're still doing that, but there are limits, and besides, we can see with Conrad's house, we're not quite there, and that's true of most of these houses. I'll show you one in a minute that's doing great with that approach, but in all these cases, we've learned from the house before, and we're constantly fine-tuning. The house in the bottom right there was part of a program that National Resources Canada has run again across the country to try and mainstream this more. They've restricted us to simple systems, no more science experiments, and we're happy to say that that was the first one finished in the country. But even the CHBA is now, who haven't been the most advanced in terms of leading energy efficiency, are on the bandwagon. They're seriously working towards a net zero energy labeling program that will be available across the country, that will give homeowners the quality assurance so that when they're buying a net zero energy house, when the builder says it's a net zero energy house, they've got a label on it that's third-party verified and lets that homeowner know they're getting what they're paying for, and it's not just some builder salesman like me telling them that, you know, this is the best thing since sliced bread. It's really something you can take to the bank. So in all of this, our recipe hasn't changed that much. As I say, we've been fine-tuning it, but we learned after about the third house that really it didn't need to be that complicated. It was a step-by-step process that you could take to net zero energy. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I will talk about some of the things that we're doing differently now than we did before. So this is the house that we built right after Conrad's. And it was on a perfect solar site and you can see from the bar chart there, that's the percentage of sun that we got monthly related to the theoretical amount of sun that was available. So we're capturing most of it. This house is actually producing a surplus of about 4,000 kilowatt hours a year in, year out since it was built. I mean, it is, Conrad's got 5 people living in his house. We've got 1 living in that house. That's probably part of the difference. Plus, I think that we're sort of hyper-modeling this house. Like you know, when you buy a Prius and you coast down all the hills and squeeze every bit of energy. Well, I think the homeowner is doing that here, but nonetheless, it sort of works that way. And so after this, we you know, I thought, oh great, let's just build on perfect lots all the time. Well, the fact of the matter is, perfect lots exist. Maybe there are 1 in 20, 1 in 30 in Edmonton. We've got these lovely boulevard trees. We've got other houses. We've got most of them face the wrong way. So obviously that's not going to work. So you can see on this house we've angled the roof so that we got the solar panels facing at the optimum angle so we get the most amount of juice out of every square foot of panel. Well, that's changed too. We're now that they've gotten so much cheaper, we're actually sloping the roof the other way so we get more area to put more panels on. We're finding we're putting a lot bigger arrays on the roof, and that we need them to make up that sort of shortfall. But it's kind of interesting how that has changed. We're also finding now we can get to net zero with east and west facing houses by just getting the sun over top of the roof. And I think this is something that Landmark has found in their work and makes it possible. Because if it's a solution that doesn't work on anything but the perfect lot, it's not really the solution. You know, one thing that hasn't changed is, and Conrad talked about it a little bit, is the need to start off with modeling. The number of people that I've spoken to, and I apologize to anybody who was here, you know, in the previous session, but if you don't start with good modeling, you can't possibly get there with you know, cost effectively. It has to be done early. I had a couple of situations where I've had people come up to me after giving talks, and they had just done their building. This one was a farm couple in Manitoba, and they wanted to do the right thing. They put in lots of insulation, but they didn't pay much attention to air tightness, and they only put in double glazed windows, and they weren't going to get there. The other guy was a mechanical engineer. He had this strange idea about he put massive amounts of, he built with 2x8 walls, and also didn't pay too much attention to air tightness, and there was just no way that was going to be an energy efficient house. He had so much wood conducting energy through those walls and no continuous layer of insulation. He's a mechanical engineer, and he didn't do any modeling, and like both these guys are done. They're not going to fix those houses ever. You know, and I mean, it's simple. The energy model tells you where all the components of energy loss are going in the house. You can easily play with the dials and say, what happens if I add, in this case here, a couple more inches of insulation to the floor? How much energy will it save? How much will it cost? What's the cost per kilowatt hour per year to save that energy? And how does that compare with the last increment on all the other things, the attic insulation, the wall insulation, the air tightness, the efficiency of the HRV, the efficiency of the heating system? You can use it to dial all that stuff in so that you can get the lowest possible cost solution for your building. And you don't have to do this many times. Like, you know, we've done this, and we kind of have a formula now that works just about in every, you know, that's our starting point in every building now. And unless we see some kind of anomaly, we really don't you know, it's not much extra work. And you know, one of the things that we've learned from the passive house approach is how important thermal bridging is as the air tightness, or sorry, as the insulation levels go up. So you can see, you know, if you have an R15 wall, the amount of conductance from thermal bridging isn't that big a proportion, but once you get up in, say, the R40 range, that's looking like a bigger number. It's like bigger than the conductive losses through the wall. So it's really worth looking at these little details, and one of the great things about the passive house approach is that it forces you to quantify all those things. It's also helped us in the air tightness department. In the passive house economy in Europe has resulted in the development of all kinds of better windows, better HRVs, all kinds of cool tapes that will rip the hair right off your arm, that will stick to everything and forever, that help you make buildings way tighter. And it also raised the bar. You know, we used to think 1.5 air changes an hour was good. Now we're aiming for 0.6 or less. You know, I mentioned windows. Windows are, some of the passive house windows from Europe are light years better than what we can get here in North America, and some of them are actually getting to be reasonably priced. But if you're looking for windows for a project, you want to focus on the highest R value glass, obviously. Match the solar heat gain coefficient to the situation. So if you're after passive solar, you're getting it. New glass now has very high R value and good solar heat gain coefficient. That's an improvement from Conrad's house. In fact, that one thing would probably have brought Conrad closer. There's a couple of things that would have. Even the new solar panels now have way more efficiency. So if we'd put on the same area of solar panels, they would have been less expensive and just about made its deficit, I would think.
Now you tell me.
I know. Well, that's what I said when I thanked you for helping us learn at your expense. So yeah, so you know, with windows you want slim profile frames. The good part is the glass. The less frame, the better. That's more of a heat loser than a gainer, and you're putting it in for light in the first place. And the fewer small windows you put in, the better. Fewer windows with less frame and framing are going to use less energy, give more light, and cost less too than a bunch of small windows. So in a nutshell, I mean, this is kind of our formula going ahead. We've dialed back a little bit on the walls. We're at R40, and in Conrad's it was R56. We're putting a little less insulation under the slab, and the frost walls. Attic's about the same because it's cheap, and we're aiming for as tight as we can get and thermal bridge free construction. Another big change that's come along with is heat recovery ventilators. We can now get European ones that are much more efficient, use way less energy to run the fans, and that they're hopefully will drive North American manufacturers to do the same. But the biggest thing probably is the availability now of low temperature air source heat pumps. That's a degree day graph for Edmonton, and so for the winter of 2013. So a heating degree day is a day when you need to heat your house 1 degree. And so if it's minus 30 out and you want it 20 inside, that's a 50 heating degree day. Most of the heating season actually occurs at temperatures below where these things will work. Because the air source heat pumps, believe it or not, can extract heat from air up to minus 25. So you may think it's cold out there, but it could be colder yet, and that's what the air source heat pump does. It's actually cooling that air down below that temperature, squeezing that heat out, and putting it in your house. And at minus 25 or somewhere in the minus 20, minus 25 range, that thing won't work, and you got to flip over to pure electric resistance heating. But most of our winter occurs at temperatures above that, so these things work reasonably well. And in fact, we have more winter at temperatures above minus 20 than most parts of the world have altogether. So we actually get more benefit out of these things than the people in Vancouver and more temperate climates. So they actually make a lot of sense. We've got them now in 2 houses. We've got 2 more that they're going into, and so far they seem to be working okay. So and at the end, now I would not put one of these things in a house that unless you're powering it with renewable energy. If you're powering it with electricity, you're probably better off to stick with gas. But if you're trying to get down to that net zero range and you're not, they will do 2 things. One is they'll shrink the size of your solar array so you might have room on your roof, and they'll save you money on that solar array, and they'll also reduce the amount of electricity that you send to the grid and bring back, because there's a cost to that too. And I mean, this is a schematic of how these things work. It's with the mini split, which is what we're using. They're very small, and they mount on the basement ceiling. It's a pretty simple system. We tie it in with our HRV. On bigger houses, we have to go with bigger ones that look a lot like a furnace. So the other one is using air source heat pumps. Now these are power for domestic hot water. These are electric, and they're also a little counterintuitive, because in the summer they're great because they tend to cool your house, because they're basically heating the water by extracting heat from your house air. But in the winter they're cooling your house, which is not such a great thing. But if you're replacing that heat with an air source heat pump, then combined you can actually get a reasonable efficiency out of these, where you're contributing to less electricity, import, export, and also shrinking your PV array. So, in a nutshell, are we there yet? Yeah, I think we're there. Not only can we do it, but we have choices. We can sort of dial in the amount of energy conservation. If we've got the roof area for a big PV array, you can actually go with a big PV array and air source heat pumps, and I think that's largely the approach that Landmark has taken. We for about the same cost are able to upgrade the energy or the building envelope, put in a smaller heat pump, and shrink our PV array and have about the same incremental cost. I mean, in a perfect world, we would be building passive houses with tiny PV arrays, and that's kind of, but it tends to be more expensive. And so the recipes look like this. I won't, the print is small. I won't kind of dwell on this, but there are choices, and the real value proposition, like When we did the first one, the incremental cost on the Riverdale duplexes was over $100,000 per unit. That was not going to go anywhere, but we're down now to the $40,000 to $50,000 range to have essentially no heat bill ever, cheaper house to operate, more durable. And I think that it becomes more compelling. And that price premium is going to fall as the building code improves. We've just seen a jump in the building code here in Alberta, so that means that every other construction is going to be more expensive. If we add in a carbon tax and start paying the real price for energy, I think that the business case for this will be fairly compelling. And then consider that these are just plain better houses. Like, they're luxuriously comfortable, they're healthier, they've got this constant supply of fresh air, you got the peace of mind of knowing that you can look your kids in the eye and say, you know, we've done what we should. They work better, they tend to be simpler, well thought out from a building science point of view, more resilient in a disaster situation where the power goes off. Like in the Riverdale house, we tested it. You could turn off all heat in that house and it would stay above freezing for 4 days if the sun didn't even come up. Like, that was at minus 25. And you know, the same techniques that are going into making it more energy efficient are also making it more durable. Better construction. I mean, the builders who do this tend to be more careful with the details. The precision coming out of Landmark's plant is just amazing, and I think that the long term, it's probably long term the most economical house you can build. And the next step is to take this to multifamily. So we're now working on a 16-unit stacked townhouse project for the Intermet Housing Society for large immigrant families over in Westmount. We're pretty sure we're going to get it to net zero. We're hitting passive house performance. The metrics change a lot when the building goes up. There's so much less exterior wall for the amount of enclosed space that the business case is a whole lot different. And it's also different for nonprofits. These people are not going to flip these buildings. They're anticipating owning this building forever, and they're not only paying the construction costs, but they're also paying for the energy costs and the maintenance costs. So it's all one budget, all one pocket, and it's really compelling for them to make the best building they can, and forget about the long term. So, and now we got Blatchford coming along here, which is really exciting. So we're treating this project for the Intermet Housing Society as kind of training wheels for Blatchford. So thank you.